Meet Sarah Ellison, a woman who spent her 42 years building a life so predictable you could set a clock by it. She's a librarian in a small suburban town just outside the city, the kind of place where everyone knows your name but no one really knows you. Every morning, she wakes up at 6:30 sharp in her tidy one-bedroom house, feeds her goldfish, named Melville, after the author, and heads to the library. There, she spends her days surrounded by books, stories of adventure, love, and heroism, while her own story feels like it's stuck on the same dull page. She's got mousy brown hair she keeps in a sensible bun, wire-rimmed glasses that slip down her nose, and a wardrobe of cardigans in every shade of beige. She's kind, but quiet, someone who fades into the background, unnoticed even by herself. Sarah's always loved animals. As a kid, she'd beg her parents for a puppy, dreaming of a loyal friend to fill the empty spaces of her shy childhood. But her dad was allergic, and her mom said pets were too messy, so she settled for feeding stray cats behind the garage and reading Charlotte's Web until the pages wore thin. Now, as an adult, she tells herself she doesn't have time for a pet. Too much responsibility, too much chaos for her orderly little world. But deep down, there's a ache, a longing for something warm, something alive, to break the silence of her evenings. It's March 8, 2025, and the rain's been falling all day, a cold, relentless drizzle that soaks through her sensible shoes as she walks home from the library. Her umbrella's fighting a losing battle against the wind, and she's already dreading another night alone, microwaved soup, a PBS documentary, and Melville staring blankly from his bowl. The street's quiet, just the patter of rain and the occasional splash of a car tire. She's 3 blocks from home when it happens. A sound stops her cold, a faint, pitiful whimper, barely audible over the storm. She tilts her head, clutching her umbrella tighter. There it is again, coming from a beat-up sedan parked crookedly by the curb. Her heart stumbles. She's not the type to investigate strange noises, Sarah's more likely to hurry past and pretend she didn't hear. But something about this sound tugs at her, like a thread unraveling a sweater she's worn too long. She steps closer, rain dripping off her glasses, and crouches down. Under the car, half hidden in shadow, is a dog, a scruffy, medium-sized mutt with matted brown fur plastered to its bony frame. Its hind leg is bent wrong, a jagged cut oozing dark red into a puddle. Its eyes, big and amber, lock onto hers, wide with fear and something else, hope, maybe. It whimpers again, a sound that hits Sarah like a punch. For a moment, she freezes. Her mind races, I don't know what to do. I can't just leave it. What if it bites? I'm not equipped for this. But then the dog shivers, its breath a tiny cloud in the cold, and Sarah feels that old ache flare up, sharper now. She kneels in the mud, her coat soaking through, and whispers, "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going anywhere." She's not sure if she's talking to the dog or herself. But in that moment, she knows one thing, she can't walk away, not from this. Sarah's knees ache as she kneels in the muddy puddle, rain dripping off her glasses and blurring the world into a smear of gray. The dog's still there, trembling under the car, its amber eyes fixed on her like she's its last lifeline. She's never been impulsive, Sarah's the type to plan her grocery list a week in advance, but something about this moment feels urgent, like a page turning in one of her books. She can't just walk away, not when every shiver from that scruffy mutt tugs at the lonely corners of her heart. Okay, let's do this, she mutters, shoving her umbrella aside. It flops uselessly into the gutter, but she barely notices. She shrugs off her coat, a sensible wool thing she's worn for years, and lays it flat on the wet ground, an offering. The dog flinches, its ears flattening, and Sarah freezes. What if it's scared of me? What if it's too hurt to move? Her hands hover, uncertain, until she remembers the granola bar in her bag, a peanut butter one, her emergency snack. She fumbles with the wrapper, the crinkle loud against the rain, and breaks off a piece. Here, look, she says softly, holding it out. You're hungry, right? The dog's nose twitches, a faint spark of interest, but it doesn't budge. Minutes tick by, 5, maybe 10, and Sarah's legs cramp, her skirt soaking through. She's about to give up when it shifts, dragging itself forward an inch, then another. Its injured leg trails uselessly, the cut gaping and raw, and Sarah's chest tightens. That's from glass, maybe a bottle. Poor thing. Finally, it's close enough. She slides the coat under its belly, slow and steady, whispering nonsense like, "You're so brave, you know that?" It whimpers but doesn't snap, just lets her wrap it up, a soggy bundle of fur and trust. She staggers to her feet, the weight heavier than she expected, and stumbles to her car parked a block away. The rain's a full-on assault now, plastering her hair to her face, but she doesn't care. She fumbles the back door open and lays the dog across the seat, its head lolling against her library tote bag. The drive to the emergency vet is a blur, wipers slapping, her hands shaking on the wheel. She's never been good in a crisis, she once cried when Melville's bull cracked. But now, glancing at the rearview mirror, she sees those eyes again, dim but alive, and something steely clicks inside her. The vet's a 24-hour place 10 minutes away, a neon sign flickering through the storm. She pulls into the lot, tires skidding, and hauls the dog inside, bursting through the doors with a soggy, "Please, help." The receptionist blinks, then jumps up. "What be we got?" A vet tech rushes over, and Sarah stammers, I found it. Its legs hurt bad. I don't know what happened." They whisk the dog away on a stretcher, leaving Sarah dripping in the lobby, her coat gone, her bag forgotten in the car. She sinks into a plastic chair, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The clock says 8:17 p.m. She's late for her soup, her documentary, her quiet little life, but none of that matters. A vet emerges after what feels like hours, though it's only been 30 minutes. "He's got a deep laceration, lost some blood," she says, peeling off gloves. "We're prepping for surgery now. You did good getting him here fast." Sarah nods, her throat tight. Surgery? She doesn't even know this dog, doesn't have a plan, but she hears herself say, "Do whatever he needs." The vet smiles faintly. "He's a fighter. We'll call you when he's out." Sarah sits back, rain still dripping from her hair, and realizes she's in this now, really in it, for better or worse. Sarah sits in the vet's lobby, her damp skirt sticking to her legs, the clock ticking past 9 p.m. The fluorescent lights hum, and her stomach growls, she's missed her soup, her routine shattered like a dropped teacup. She's never been this far off script, but there's a strange calm settling over her, a quiet resolve she hasn't felt since she was a kid feeding strays behind the garage. The vet's words echo in her head, "He's a fighter." She hopes it's true. The call comes at 9:47 p.m. "Surgery went well," the vet says. "Laceration stitched, no infection yet. He's groggy, but you can take him home tonight if you're up for it." Sarah blinks. Home? She doesn't even have a leash, let alone a plan, but she hears herself say, "Yes, I'll be there." She pays with her emergency credit card, $3.72, a dent she'll feel later, and they hand her a woozy mutt wrapped in a blanket, along with antibiotics and a care sheet she barely schemes. Back at her house, the dog's a limp weight in her arms as she fumbles the door open. Melville glares from his bowl, offended by the intrusion. She sets the dog on her couch, her pristine, beige couch, and he flops there, eyes half open, a patchy mess of brown fur and stitches. "You need a name," she murmurs, brushing a tentative hand over his head. He doesn't flinch, just sighs, and she decides, "Rain. Because that's where I found you." The first night's rough. Rain whines every few hours, and Sarah jolts awake, stumbling to check on him. She heats up chicken broth, something she read online, and spoons it into his mouth, her hands shaking as he laps it up. The cut on his leg looks angry, red around the stitches, and she dabs it with a warm cloth, whispering, "You're okay, you're okay." By morning, she's bleary-eyed, her bun unraveling, but Rain's tail gives a weak wag, a flicker of life that makes her smile. Days blur into a rhythm. She takes leave from the library, her first sick days in years, and turns her living room into a recovery ward. Rain's bed is a nest of old towels by the heater, and she sits cross-legged beside him, reading aloud from The Secret Garden like he's a kid at story time. He watches her, those amber eyes tracking her voice, and she wonders what he's been through, alone, hurt, lost in the rain. "We're not so different," she says once, then blushes at her own sentimentality. Trust builds slow. At first, Rain tenses when she moves too fast, his ears flattening like he's waiting for a blow. But by day 4, he lets her scratch behind his ears, his head tipping into her palm. One evening, she's sipping tea, real tea, not the instant stuff, when Rain drags himself closer and rests his chin on her knee. Her breath catches. It's the first time he sought her out, and it feels like a gift, fragile and warm. By the end of the week, he's hobbling, 3 legs and a limp, but moving. He follows her to the kitchen, nose twitching at the smell of her toast, and she laughs, tossing him a crust. "You're getting pushy," she teases, and his tail thumps the floor. The house isn't silent anymore, there's the click of claws, the rustle of towels, the soft huff of his breath. Sarah catches herself humming, something she hasn't done in years. She doesn't know when it happened, but Rain's not just a guest, he's hers. And as she watches him curl up by her feet, she thinks, maybe I'm his, too. Weeks have passed since that rainy night, and Sarah's house isn't the same. The beige couch bears faint claw marks, the kitchen floor is dusted with kibble, and Melville's bowl now shares counter space with a bag of dog treats. Rain's leg has healed, still stiff on cold days, but strong enough to carry him on adventures. His fur's grown out, a shaggy brown coat that catches the light, and those amber eyes shine with a mischief Sarah never expected. She's changed too, her bun's looser now, her cardigan swapped for sweaters with paw prints, a quiet rebellion against her old, orderly self. Their days have a rhythm. Mornings start with Rain nudging her awake, his cold nose pressed to her hand until she groans and stumbles to the kitchen. She brews coffee, real coffee, not instant, and pours kibble, laughing as he dances in circles, tail wagging like a metronome. They walk to the park each afternoon, Rain trotting ahead, sniffing every bush like it's a mystery to solve. Sarah used to avoid the park, too many people, too much noise, but now she nods at neighbors, even chats with a guy who walks a dachshund named Frank. Rain's her bridge, pulling her out of her shell one wag at a time. The bond's deep now, woven through small moments. One night, she's reading The Hobbit aloud, and Rain hops onto the couch, uninvited but welcome, curling against her side. His warmth seeps through her sweater, and she rests a hand on his back, feeling his heartbeat steady and sure. Another day, he brings her a gift, a chewed-up bookmark, dropped at her feet with a proud huff. She laughs, tucking it into her pocket like a treasure. "You're ridiculous," she tells him, and he flops over for a belly rub, grinning in that doggy way. The hardships feel distant now, but they've left their mark. Sarah's braver. Last week, she signed up to volunteer at the local shelter, something she'd never have dared before. Rain comes along, hobbling beside her as she hands out treats to the kennel dogs. She catches herself smiling more, humming tunes she'd forgotten. Her life's fuller, messier, alive in a way it hadn't been. Rain's gratitude shows in his loyalty, he shadows her everywhere, sleeping by her feet at night, a scruffy guardian who's claimed her as much as she's claimed him. One crisp morning, they sit on the porch, the first sun in days breaking through the clouds. Rain sprawled beside her, gnawing a stick, and Sarah sips her coffee, watching him. "You saved me too, you know," she murmurs, and his ears perk up, like he understands. She used to think kindness was a small thing, feeding strays, holding doors, but Rain's taught her it's bigger, a ripple that changes everything. They're a team now, 2 souls who found each other in the storm, and as she scratches his ears, she knows this is home. And that's Sarah and Rain's story, a rainy night, a wounded pup, and a kindness that turned into a forever bond. Isn't it amazing how one moment can rewrite your life? If this tugged at your heart, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next tale of compassion and courage. I've got more stories like this coming your way.